Hello, I'm Nathan Loynes. This video is going to explore children of parents who experience mental health difficulties. My aims in this video are to point out key themes and findings of Simpson, Adkins and Dacia's 2018 thematic analysis of existing literature on COPE MHD children. These findings include how children make sense of mental illness, perceptions of parental behaviour, meaning making about parental emotional states, perceptions about parental vulnerability and stigma, and the strategies that children use in the family system and outside of it to cope with their parents' conditions. There's the key reference there if you want to make note of it and use it at a later time. I describe a healthy brain as a freshly baked blueberry pie. You know, everything is in its right place. It's all organized and ready to eat. A brain with a mental illness is a blueberry pie that somebody has stuck a fork in, mushed it all up, and everything is mixed up. That's one of the children that Murdoch studied in 2010 and their take of what it's like being a child living with a parent with mental illness. Does mental illness run in families? Well, offspring of parents facing mental health challenges exhibit a heightened likelihood of approximately 2 to 3 times of developing mental health disorders compared to their counterparts. So there's something in that says that children that come from families where mental illness is prevalent, they're likely to exhibit mental illness themselves later on in life. There are various psychosocial elements such as attachment relationships, parenting style and competency, socioeconomic factors and adverse life events that all play significant roles in this context. So we can't think of it in quite straightforward terms. It is crucial to emphasise that despite increased risk of unfavourable outcomes, numerous parents grappling with mental health difficulties exhibit effective parenting, and many COPE MHD individuals do not encounter any adverse effects. In one of the studies, Walsh proposed that comprehending the mechanisms connecting parental mental health difficulties to adverse outcomes in COPE MHD children can be enhanced by exploring how COPE MHD individuals perceive their parents' mental distress. And then understanding the significance of this perception to the children and examining how it influences their comprehension of mental health is crucial in unraveling some of these complex connections. Many of the studies found that children operate with a lay psychosocial model of understanding. It seems that most of the children perceive mental distress as stemming from challenging or traumatic life experiences, indicating a preference for more of a psychosocial model of mental health disorders. Additionally, the children seem to associate repercussions of this distress with the emergence of physical dysfunction. For example, various studies underscored children's recurrent utilization of medicalized language in their interpretations of mental health disorder as an illness linked to a physically malfunctioning body and brain. So it's not all psychosocial. There's some element that is drawing on a biomedical understanding that their parent is ill in some way. When it came to understanding parental behaviour, children were very aware and acute to understanding subtle changes in their parents' behaviours. Sometimes parents did more of something, sometimes they did less of something. Children primarily seem to acquire awareness of mental disorders through observation of behavioural changes. These changes include heightened duration and frequency of activities such as sleeping, avoidance of work, and reduced engagement in household chores, diminished interest in previously enjoyed activities, more expressions of emotion such as crying and shouting, and the display of unusual or inappropriate behaviours. And this led children to infer assumptions about their parents' emotional state, and they were highly aware of what this emotional state might be. Children also identified alterations in their parents in terms of negative felt emotions, such as noticing them getting angry more easily or being more sad. Also, in them expressing negative emotions, such as instances where my mum starts yelling at me. Numerous studies indicate that children characterize these changes as unstable and unpredictable, as seen in statements like, sometimes he'll get angry and sometimes he'll be very nice, like different 1 minute later. However, there is a prevalent perspective among the children that their parent is distinct from the mental health disorder, and it is not a fundamental characteristic of the parent. That's the children being able to understand that it's not really the parent, it is their illness that is influencing the parent's behaviour. For Simpson, Adkins and Dacius, a second overarching theme revolves around notions of vulnerability, protection and secrecy, encapsulated in the metaphorical concept of the child feeling like they're always walking on eggshells. In this theme, evident in all the papers, it illustrates children's endeavours to reshape their lives to safeguard their parents, themselves, and the familiarity or aspirations they have, driven by the perception of mental health disorders that make the parent vulnerable. Within the treading on eggshells theme, there's a persistent anxiety stemming from the mental health disorder. I worry just in case. Nearly all the studies depicted a pervasive sense of fear and anxiety among the children regarding the impact of mental health disorder on both their parent and themselves. Tronson highlighted how awareness of the negative stereotypes around mental health intensifies these fears, with one participant expressing, I've heard many times lately about people with mental health problems who have killed a family member. My mum isn't that bad now, but you never know. Murdoch suggested that worries escalated due to the unpredictability and instability of changes in the parent's behaviour and mood. In looking after their parents, children often hide or suppress their own needs. A prevalent subtheme revolves around children consciously subjugating their own need to cater to their parents' well-being, a poignant experience encapsulated as the like always treading on eggshells. This adjustment is made to prevent upsetting or burdening the parent, underlining the perception of the parent as being vulnerable. Reibschlager illustrated such an approach, stating, I try not to talk to her so she doesn't get upset and get worse. I try not to tell her things that would make her get upset. Maybury et al. Noted that children felt the need to be quiet when the parent was unwell. Children also engage in more caretaking behaviour. Additional efforts to avoid burdening or upsetting the parent included engaging in more housework, looking after their siblings, refraining from provocation, avoiding bringing friends home, staying out of the house, or generally keeping a distance from the parent. Furthermore, children often concealed their worries from their parents, reassuring them that they were unaffected by their parents' distress. This subtheme sheds light on the complex dynamics of children navigating their roles and responsibilities while attempting to shield their parent from additional stress or emotional turmoil. Hiding the family secret. Children harbour a belief that, owing to mental health disorders, their parent or family is perceived as not being normal. They possess a keen awareness that within societal norms, the topic of mental health is often treated as a taboo, resulting in mental health disorders being treated as a family secret. This inclination towards secrecy is partly rooted in their recognition of potential stigmatization from others. However, within all the literature itself, conclusions are not quite clear cut. Is it a case that children are hopeless in these situations, or have they accepted things? Even in the face of these challenging experiences, children expressed a sense of becoming accustomed to the situation, as noticed by Griffiths et al. The nature of these comments leaves ambiguity regarding whether there is an underlying sense of hopelessness or acceptance. Nevertheless, their encounters were characterized as simply being part of my life. According to Kogan et al., COPE MHD children were less inclined to harbour stigmatising opinions about mental health disorders in general. Their experiences had encouraged them to develop a sense of empathy around the subject. In fact, some of these children even express positive attitudes towards mental health as their direct consequence of their exposure to their parents' mental health disorder. Courtesy stigma. The recognition of social stigma aligns with early research indicating that relatives also undergo associative or courtesy stigma. COPE MHD children encounter feelings of shame and isolation stemming from their awareness of courtesy stigma. This awareness is, in part, fueled by familial requests for secrecy, corroborating previous findings. Consequently, the children refrain from inviting friends home, grapple with embarrassment, and find it challenging to share their experiences with others due to fear of humiliation. According to Walsh, children who perceive mental health disorders as external to their mental representation of the parent may be more prone to experiencing better outcomes compared to those who internalize MHD, especially the negative aspects within their mental depiction of the parent. The capacity to externalize mental health disorders from the parent or oneself has been linked to an increased resilience in COPE MHD children. This suggests that the ability to separate mental health disorders from the parent or self contributes to an enhanced coping mechanism in the well-being of these children, i.e., the child comes to see the parent. It's not them, it's their illness that is making them this way. A different story. A narrative therapy approach could potentially assist COPE MHD children in encouraging them to develop more positive attitudes about their experience. This approach aims to shift them away from problem-saturated understandings of mental health towards more preferred narratives or stories. By engaging in this therapeutic process, COPE MHD children may be encouraged to develop helpful and adaptive schemas, fostering a more constructive and empowering framework for understanding mental health challenges. As usual, the conclusion is complex. There's a necessity for specialised support for these children and around the perceived takeover of the parent's behaviour and emotions by the mental health disorder that lead them towards an understanding that the parent is deemed abnormal and highly vulnerable. And in response to these perceptions, children undertake various lifestyle adjustments to shield this vulnerability. The multifaceted nature of this underscores the complex strategies that children employ in response to the challenges posed by their parents' mental health difficulties. So in general summary, children make sense of mental illness in complex ways. Having said that, there are still common themes that emerge about this meaning making, such as that children have a heightened perception of changes in the parent's behaviour. The parent can reduce expected behaviour, such as cleaning, or increase certain behaviours, such as shouting. From this, children infer parental emotional states, often attributing these emotions to not really being them. It's not really my mum that's acting like this. Children are often aware that parents are vulnerable and in need of more help and support, and children are aware that mental health disorders might make the family vulnerable as a whole. Children are often in a perpetual state of worry. Children are heightened to the possibility of stigma, and sometimes children carry some of this stigma within themselves, as seen in courtesy stigma. Finally, children use a range of thinking and behavioural strategies to try and manage their parents' parental mental health difficulties. There's a key source. If you'd like to make a note of it and delve in a little bit deeper, feel free to do so. I hope you found that useful.